Welcome to the Money Over 50 podcast, brought to you by Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue from Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Welcome to Money Over 50. Today's topic, pain does exist in this dojo.
Fear does not exist in this dojo, does it? No, sensei. Pain does not exist in this dojo, does it? No, sensei. What's the movie, Dallas?
It's Karate Kid, Michael. You were surprised to hear that I knew that, weren't you?
Karate Kid?
Yeah.
It's the movie's 30. It was shot 37 years ago.
Is it really?
37 years ago, 1984 film.
What a classic.
It's the mantra of the Cobra Kai dojo, which the bad kids all attended in the Karate Kids. So they
obviously had the black gis on rather than the white ones.
They did. They did. It was consistent with villains in movies. They had the black clothing on.
Yeah.
Some of the listeners may not have actually watched Karate Kid because
if you haven't watched it, go back and watch it. It's a classic for a reason.
It's a classic. I remember. So I was 9 when it came out.
Yeah. And
I remember watching it, and I just thought this is the best movie I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's funny. That's what I mean. Where I remember watching it for the first time when I was 9 as well, when it didn't just come out. But I remember thinking much the same thing. So it's a classic.
It's a classic.
If you haven't.
So the title or the sayings that the Cobra Kai sensei, who is basically an evil man, an unscrupulous, an unscrupulous sensei that operated outside the whole point of karate. He used it for bad
evil purposes rather than for
so
good.
he would have the children or the students repeat, fear does not exist in this dojo, pain does not exist in this dojo, as if to say that we're not scared ever, and we never feel pain. I got to thinking that pain exists everywhere.
Yes.
and so pain does exist in this dojo. Now, what I mean by that,
there's no free lunch.
There's no free lunch. Yeah, so there's any number of analogies we could use here. Yeah. You have to give up something to get something back. Yeah. So it's funny. I think decision making, Dallas, sometimes people think, if I can make this decision,
there'll be no pain,
and there'll be no pain either way. There'll be nothing that I have to compromise. There'll be nothing that I have to give up. So, the examples I've got 3 examples here. So, the giving up something to get something back, as in the pain that you have to go through. That may be a fortnightly amount of $800 per fortnight to go towards your super for the last 10 years of your working life. That's what we may discuss with a prospective client and say, well, this is what you need to do. That may also be giving up more stable returns, more stable, lower returns for higher, more volatile returns in order to allow you to be able to draw more income for longer during your retirement. So now that also may, some other thing that you may have to give up is that may be giving up $10,000 worth of income each year in retirement. So you might have to say, I have to cut my income by $10,000 that I would normally want to draw if you chose not to do one or more of the aforementioned trade-offs. So the things that I just mentioned there, you could always say,
I'm not going to do it. I don't want that pain.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah, so I'm choosing not to have that pain. But this is a great point, is that you're not able to go, I don't want that pain and I don't want any other pain. So if you're choosing to get a lower return and or to give up less of your net income while you're working, you are going to have the pain of having less income in retirement. There's no way around the pain.
Or the pain may be you don't drop your income in retirement, but you run out of money too early. Or there is something that you're going to have to give up at some stage. So I guess the whole point of this podcast episode is there is something that you're going to have to give up.
Michael, this is very relevant to me right now. One of my latest little saying, I often have little things that I chew away on in my little brain, and my phrase that bounces around in my brain at the moment is "life is pain." Which, and then I say these things to Nicola sometimes, and she goes, "Geez, it's depressing. Don't go and tell people that." But when I say life is pain, what I mean, it's ultimately a liberating thing, because I think what happens is there's a part of our brain that's looking for the pain-free way to the pain-free choice. Now, once you accept that there is no pain-free choice, you are freeing up your energy and your focus to make actual choices in the real world that allow you to make the decision to choose the pain that you want to give you the outcome that you're willing to trade off the pain for. And so, I've just actually, this is where I was talking about this with a friend the other day, where, say for example, we're about to have our second child, and anyone who's, I'm guessing anyone who's got two children, this is, like I say, our second child, we don't know, but I already know that this is going to be much harder than having one child.
I can tell you that it's for certain.
it's so you're kind of going, again, you're choosing your pain. We want to have more children. You can't want to have more children and then simultaneously go, oh no, but I don't want to be kept up at night with a newborn, or I don't want to have to be dealing with a toddler and a newborn. You cannot, and this is, I think, the thing where in our modern world we're so used to removing ourselves from pain where possible that acceptance of, well, to have anything that's worthwhile, there is going to be some pain, and you might, for a lot of people, and that's where it's a good example. I know people that go, well, I just don't want to have kids. It's not that meaningful to me. I'm not. It's not a meaningful thing to me. I'm not going to have kids because, again, objectively, you look at it and go, it's pretty painful, and what's the payoff? So either choice that you make there is completely fine. If you choose to have 17 kids and because that's really important to you and you're willing to put up with the pain of going through that 17 times, or if you choose to have no kids, either of those choices are fine. What's not fine is to have 17 kids and then go, geez, this place is a madhouse. There's chaos everywhere. There's always a crying baby. There's always, arguments with kids with each other. Or to not have kids and then later in life say, oh, well, I wish I'd had kids and gone through that. So this is, I think, the point that you're making is pain does exist in this dojo. This is what we are promising to our clients or to people that we're talking about with this is there is no magic bullet. We're not offering to give you something for nothing. There is always a price that you're paying for those things.
There is a price to pay, and it's about recognizing that and coming up with an acceptable price to pay. And it's about trade-offs. Yes. Everything is a trade-off. Yep. Everything is a trade-off.
Yeah, and I think your examples you use there are brilliant, because I've just, again, I had a new client came in yesterday, and we discussed the amount that they're spending now versus the amount that they're spending in retirement. And it was a very, very simple calculation, because I basically went, you're spending $100,000 a year now. Yeah. When you get to retirement, you are going to have to drop your income to about $60,000. Yep. Now, alternatively, and it's a bit of a simplified version, you can save $15,000 a year for the next 10 years. And then in your retirement, you will be able to keep spending $85,000 a year. So you have two choices. I don't care which one you choose. And this was the bit that we had a really interesting conversation about, especially with new clients. I always like to set the scene or set the boundaries there, where it's not my job to tell you what pain you're willing to accept. If that person came in and said, I understand what you're saying, I know that I won't have enough to be able to replace my income fully in retirement, but I don't want to give up. I don't want to give anything up for the next 10 years while I'm working. I want to keep spending all that money. That's completely fine. You can do that as long as you know that when we get to retirement, you are going to have to drop your income dramatically. Now, this person went, geez, I think that's a pretty easy decision for me. I'm going to drop the amount. I'm going to save $15,000 a year now, because when I retire, I don't want to have to change my lifestyle dramatically. Easy, job done. It was literally a 3-minute conversation about that. And I think that's your point, though, is that if if you went into that with that person saying, well, I don't want that pain in the future, but I also don't want that pain now. You're not. You just can't. You can't do that. You cannot. That's not how life works. That's not how things work. And I think your point there about your second point about the stable returns for higher, more volatile returns is another great example where anytime someone looks at how do I need my superannuation to be invested or how do I want it to be invested, you have choices of pain. You can either have people go, I don't want to see my super balance drop. Okay, fine. You can have that, but you are going to have to invest that money in a way where you get a 1% return, which means that we can then do the calculations on where that's going to put you in retirement. But you can't say, I want my super balance to grow to the point where it still needs to be, which is an 8% rate of return, but I don't want any volatility. You can't have it both ways like that.
No. And look, sometimes it stands out there. So, I mean, I had a meeting with a lady the other day, just turned 50. She is a single parent. Her daughter's only 6. So what we looked at is that she just didn't have the disposable income to put towards superannuation.
Yep.
So it was a really easy one.
Yeah.
So we looked at, okay, so what are your available resources? Yep. And we looked, there was about 35% of her superannuation balance that was sitting in idle cash at that lower, we always say low rates of about 1% rate of return. And I said, well, to me, one of the things you want to consider, because you don't have the resources to put towards superannuation from a disposable income point of view, is working that money harder. Yep. Now, I think so sometimes sometimes it's an easy one from that aspect.
Yeah.
But there is always a trade-off. There is always a trade-off.
I think, and it's interesting because I'm 32, but sometimes I feel like a real old grumpy old man here. But this is actually one of the things that I've noticed is much easier now that we're exclusively working with people 50 and over, is that this is not... Most people who are 50 and over are well aware of this and know that you can't have something for nothing. There has to be a trade-off. I remember when we used to work with younger people, this was sometimes you almost had to be the bad guy and explain to people that you can't have everything in life. It was very bizarre. I remember a conversation I had once with there was a woman and her husband came in for a meeting, first meeting, and they were sort of late 20s. And like a lot of meetings, I sort of started with, okay, well, what's important? What's important to you? I think I phrased this, what's most important to you guys? And she said, I can't remember now exactly all, but it was like, I want a new car. I want to upgrade our house. I want a wedding. I want a honeymoon. I want another baby. I want to go to part-time work now. I want to change career. But she rattled off like 8 things. And she just kept going. And I was sort of shocked. And she just kept rattling them. I want this. I want this. I want this. I want this. And I basically just said, well, you can't have all those things. Pick 2 of them. And her husband just went, thank you. That's what I've been saying for the last 5 years. So it was hilarious because I was going.
So you did help.
Yeah. So it was hilarious because it was one of those things where I was going, you're 30 years of age. How have you got to 30 years of age without realizing that you can't have these 10 conflicting things. You can't have all of them. Yeah. There is a choice that needs to be made. There's not unlimited money. There's not unlimited time.
Yeah, look, everything. Just think of things pulling against each other. So it's a real. That's how I like to. Yeah. So people will say, I was going to retire at 65, but I want to retire at 62. But okay, well, and I also want to draw, $100,000 of income in retirement. And I say, okay, well, those 2 things right now are pulling against each other. Yep. Now we can. Yep. If you really do want that, choose there's another thing that's going to impact on something else, and the other thing that's going to impact on is how much disposable income that we're going to work out now to give up to get your retirement funded to allow you to retire earlier and to draw that type of income. So everything's pulling against each other. They're all pulling against each other. These things that people want. So it's about working out. Okay, what pain do I go through in order to get to where I want to be, and do I really want to be there now?
Given
I thought I wanted
pain,
this, but the pain I have to go through to get there is significant. It's sort of like an amateur wanting to become a professional athlete or get as fit as a professional athlete. Yeah. You got to go through a lot of pain to get there. Do you really want it? Like, when you start to learn how much pain you have to go through to get there, sometimes it then becomes, okay, well, I thought I wanted that, but I don't want to. I actually don't want to go through that pain to get there. So
I laugh because I used to say that all the time. Again, we've talked about this in the gym when I had a couple of times when I had fights coming up, and it's like you're just flogging yourself. You're training so hard all the time, and that's your whole life is consumed by that. And I'd have people that were, just drift in and sort of, I'd be talking, and then they'd go, yeah, maybe I want to have a fight. And I'd just say, no, you don't. No, you don't. I don't even want to have a fight. I'm doing it right now.
The pain that you had, that you have to go through to get there is one of those things that helps you determine whether it's that meaningful to you. That meaningful to you.
Yeah. The other thing I guess I'd add, and we sort of touched on this a bit, is that we sort of imply that you make a choice as to how meaningful is this thing to you, and are you willing to accept the pain for that? And we've touched on that if you say I'm not willing to accept that pain for that outcome, it's not then a pain-free experience. So the example, I was talking about this with a mate the other day, and we used the example of exercise or eating healthy. So exercising is painful. In some capacity, it's annoying, it's boring, it's painful, whatever it is. It's normally not, until you build it into such a habit that you can't imagine not doing it. But if you were to say, you know what, I'm just not going to exercise. It's not worth it to me. I'm not going to do that. You don't then get to be as healthy, at 80 years of age. So that's again one of those things where if you feel like you're getting off. If you feel like a decision has no pain on either end, you probably just haven't thought far enough into the future, if that makes sense. So if you're going, I'm going to just eat junk food all day, every day, because I don't want to give up junk food, that would be too painful. If you think, okay, well that's good, I've avoided that pain, and you can't see where you are going to have to pay the price for that, you probably just haven't thought far enough in the future. And I think the same thing happens more so with money, with people, where all human beings, we are short-term focused creatures. That's what we've evolved from. So if you think that you're getting something for free financially, you are not. That's just not how it works. If you think, for example, well, I don't want to put that money into super, and it doesn't really matter anyway. Well, it does matter. That you might look at the numbers and go, I will choose not to do that and to accept that cost in the future. But anytime you find yourself going, if you find yourself thinking that there's not a cost to pay for a short-term choice, you just haven't thought far enough in the future. And I think if you find yourself thinking that that you can have it all, and that you can be running in two different directions, you just can't. That's not it's not how it works.
Yeah.
And I think the bit that we probably haven't explained probably is that a big part of that 1 hour meeting is not just to go, okay, here's where you are now, here's where you want to be in the future. It's often then basically recalculating, and you go, okay, well, here's where you are now, here's where you're on track to be. Now, you say that you want to retire at this point in time. What would be required between now and then in order to make that happen? Okay, you'd have to give up 20 grand a year. Okay, you can't do that, or you don't want to do that. Okay, let's adjust that. How? So that point that you get to at the end of that first meeting, and the understanding of those trade-offs is not a static thing. Most of the time, and to me, those are the really meaningful first meetings that we have with people, whether they then need our help, whether they go on to become a client or not. Often what you're able to leave people with at the end of that first meeting is an understanding of the tension or the trade-offs between those choices. So people start that meeting not knowing, what are the costs for me. What does it mean if I want to retire at 62 versus 65? And by the end of that hour, they have a very clear picture of, okay, what will I have to give up in order to make that happen?
Yep.
And then, especially with couples, they often then go and have another conversation around, what are we willing to trade off? What are we willing to accept? So that this is exactly the sort of conversation that we enjoy having, and that we find meaningful for people in that first meeting.
Yep. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Money Over 50 financial advisors. We look forward to catching up again soon.